the real progressive view, stripped away all of the rhetoric that makes it sound more palatable, and he just says we should jump the Constitution, essentially. On the other side, you can go and read Jonah Goldberg's Liberal Fascism, which kind of gives the historical explication of all this. You can go read Thomas Sowell's Conflict of Visions, which talks about this conflict between how the founders saw government and why, and how progressives like Wilson and probably Obama see government. They're two very different views, and if you take one, then federalism, checks and balances, the Constitution are good things, and if you take the other, they are not.
That's right.
Okay, right here.
One of the questions that we haven't talked about at all, and I don't know who's the best person to answer this, is in our handouts today, there's the House bill and the Senate bill that have been passed. First of all, it sort of disturbs me these things are passed and we hardly know anything about them. But where is the next step legislatively in this? Are these two bills being married to be presented and passed, or is there anything we can do in this state if we agree or disagree, or where are we at in that respect?
Governor Steinman.
Yes, I mean, Washington, Illinois, Hawaii, New Jersey, and Maryland are the 5 states that have passed this to get them to 61 votes. California and Vermont passed it, and their governors vetoed it. And there is a constitutional question of whether, because the Constitution says the state legislatures allocate the votes, whether a veto matters. That's another area for litigation. They have introduced this in, actually come January when they introduced it in Idaho, they'll have introduced it in every state legislature around the country. Obviously that means that in 44 states at this point, it has failed in the past at least once. But they're going to keep pushing this. I mean, they're introducing it in Idaho. They hired a relatively expensive lobbyist on the Republican side because that's the smart tactic in Idaho. I don't think they'll pass it there, but it's going to be all around the country. Michigan, North Carolina, Arkansas, Vermont potentially again, certainly California after a gubernatorial election. I mean, there's a lot of money. There's a lot of money behind this because the fellow John Kozer who came up with this, his first foray into politics was he invented and got a patent on the scratch-off lottery ticket, and then went around and lobbied state legislatures to adopt monopolies on the scratch-off lottery ticket that he gets revenue from because he owns the patent to that. So, I mean, he has acknowledged that he's funding this quite a bit, and he's got quite a bit to spend.
Well, what I'm saying then is this whole meeting in this state is kind of a moot point, right? I mean, why are we sitting here? Because it's a law. And there's nothing we can do about it, whether we agree or not.
You can repeal laws, and in fact, this movement is really in its very early stages. I think people, in terms of consciousness of it, are just starting to have these kinds of meetings around the country. So, in terms of enacting that compact that we've agreed to join, there have to be enough states for 270 votes for anything to happen. So there's time for movement if citizens oppose that.
So it's also, I mean, it's probably obvious just by listening to us. It's a very partisan issue. So the states that have been approving it are exclusively Democratic legislatures with Democratic governors, I think. I mean, it's much more of a priority for people looking at it right now that their popular votes majorities are maybe disadvantaged by the Electoral College for Democrats, advantaged by Republicans. So one thing that's going to really affect how this plays out in all these other states is that calculation. And I don't think it's too hard to lobby legislators and say, do the math, is this going to help your party or not? They're figuring that out. So it's going to get more difficult for more states to be passing this as you get to states with divided government.
Because we're at 5 minutes too, how many more questions do we have?
I have one.
Okay, if you could ask your questions quickly, and then if you could answer just the question and not all the history, then we could get those 2 questions answered.
Yes, my question has to do what the state's job is. My feeling is that the job of the state is to protect the vote for the voters in that state. So if we take a situation where the popular vote goes to the Republican presidential candidate, but in the state of Washington, we vote at 80% for the Democratic candidate, but we have to vote Republican, and those electoral votes go to the Republican, and that makes him get his 270. How has the state protected us under the National Voter